The purpose of today's meeting is about supporting schools through a blended approach. So first of all, we have today's event, a live event via, or a webinar, whatever you want to refer to it as. But we also have a number of online resources, including blogs that we've been posting over the last few months really to help school leaders. So a blended approach to supporting schools, we think at this moment in time is really quite important. We want to do these events on a half-termly basis to make sure schools and trust leaders are up to date with some of the reforms that are happening behind the scenes. We're very conscious that schools are very focused at the moment on COVID recovery, keeping bubbles open and so on. But there's a whole wave of reforms that are happening in the background around teacher development that you may or may not be aware of. Some you may be very familiar with, others that you're not. So we want to try and use these as events to try and keep you up to date with what's going on, but also to offer you some reassurance, because although your focus may be on COVID, we're working behind the scenes very much with a focus on supporting you going forward and making sure you have all the information and all the support in order to respond to these reforms when it feels the right time for you. So today we're going to focus on things like the early career framework, the changes to the national professional qualifications, and the work we're doing around coaching. And we'll go into that, of course, in a lot more detail as we go along. Our focus as a teaching school hub as well is also shifting. So we've done a lot of work over the free lockdowns, which have been very strategic. It's about getting us ready for next September, putting in place the infrastructure we need. Actually, at this moment in time, our focus is shifting towards the delivery of programs, particularly from September. So this engagement with you today is the first step really of trying to make sure you're up to speed with what's going on. It's difficult, obviously, when there's so many of us on this video call to pause and have lots of questions. But if you do want to post any questions in the chat function, please do. We'll try and answer some of those questions as we go along. But if we can't answer them today, then we'll collate responses and share those with you a little bit later on within the next day or two. In terms of your note writing, you might want to, but also we're going to make all our resources available for you at the end of today's event. So you will be able to download this presentation, for example. There will be a recording of this event available for you to access, and a whole host of other resources that you can draw upon. So that's coming. In terms of who I am, first of all, I'm Paul Butler. I'm Director of School Improvement for Exceed Academies Trust, and I lead Bradford Teaching School Hub. You're probably quite pleased to know that you don't have to listen to me droning on to you for the next 45 minutes, and I am joined by a couple of colleagues. So I'll let Emma Dobson and Stuart Harrington just very briefly introduce themselves. Emma, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome this afternoon. I'm Emma Dobson with a very slightly croaky voice, so I hope that's not too off-putting. And I'm Head of Professional Learning for Exceed Academies Trust.
And hi, everyone. I'm Stuart Harrington with dreadfully awful hair after lockdown, and I'm going to be talking about the culture and coaching offer.
Thank you. So in terms of today's content, we want to really focus on some of the big picture stuff. We're just at a bit, as I say, a bit of a crossroads at this moment in time where we're starting to shift our focus on delivery. And we've got some key decisions to be making in the next few days, weeks, that will allow us then to progress to start giving you a lot more precise information. So today we want to give you that big picture and then reassure you in terms of the fine detail that's coming soon and the support that will run alongside that. You'll notice as we go through the presentation that the slides are very detailed. That's quite deliberate, and there's quite a lot of slides. There's 40 of them in total. We're not going to dwell on every slide for particularly long. We see the slides as being a resource pack for you. So again, when you come to downloading these resources at the end of the session, hopefully they've got lots of notes, lots of detail for you to refer back to in order to move some of these things forward within your own school. So we want to focus primarily on the early career framework. Obviously, Bradford's been involved in the early rollout of that this year. From September, we moved to the full national rollout. So it becomes an entitlement for all early career teachers to be able to access that. We want to briefly explore the national professional qualifications because, again, significant reforms there. There will be 6 NPQ programmes available from the autumn term, 3 new ones and 3 reformed NPQs, but there'll also be a new head teacher programme launched by the department. So we'll be looking to offer all 7 of those programmes, the NPQs and the new head teacher programme for schools within Bradford and beyond where our partners want to work closely with us. In terms of culture and coaching offer, as Stuart's just said, he'll talk us through that. We've undertaken a number of roundtable consultations recently to talk to colleagues within schools and trusts about the support they need to support COVID recovery, to help them to focus on school improvement, and culture and coaching has emerged as something that we think is really important for us to invest in going forward. So we have an offer developing for you. Just to step back briefly in terms of making sure everybody's clear on what Bradford Teaching School Hub is and what its functions are. The Hub is one of 87 teaching school hubs across the country. So as you're probably aware, the teaching school programme that we've had for the last 11 years comes to an end in August. And rather than having 850 teaching schools across the country, we'll be down to the 87 teaching school hubs that, rather than serving a partnership of schools, will serve entire geographical regions. So for us, it's serving Bradford and of course our partners that we work most closely with. So in terms of our remit there, you can see coloured in yellow on this diagram, in fact they're golden, 3 aspects: initial teacher training, the early career framework and the national professional qualifications. They're what the Department for Education refer to as the golden thread of teacher development. So they're our primary function. That's what the department really wants us to spend our time and energy focusing on. Sitting around that, we have a remit linked to becoming an appropriate body to offer early career teacher induction. So very much complementing the early career framework. You'll be able to access both those services from us from September. But we're also expected to develop other high quality professional development programmes. That's about us avoiding stepping on the toes of curriculum hubs, the Maths Hub, for example. We don't want to put on lots of maths training if the Maths Hub just up the road are doing great things. But we do need to look at where there is other need. And that's where, for example, our focus on culture and coaching comes from. The Teacher Development Network is what we're part of today, that blended approach of online events and online resources to support you going forward. So we see that as a key tool of making sure we're communicating effectively with schools and trusts, because if there's one thing we've learned from all the work that we're doing at the moment is we really have to enhance communication. Communication is vital if the reforms are going to be successful. So sitting around everything we're doing is about making sure that school leaders and trust leaders have the support, information, advice and guidance they need to move some of these reforms forward in their own setting, in order for us to help you to enhance your recruitment and retention strategy, keeping those great teachers and leaders and support staff in your school and attracting new ones when you go out to advert. Coaching and culture underpins everything we do, whether that's the NPQs or early career framework provision. And again, we're going to make sure we put lots of time and energy into that. Our remit covers all phases of learning and it covers all types of school as well. So we're here to support everybody from nursery schools up to post-16 provision. There are a couple of links there that I've included in the slides that you can access a little bit later on. One is a blog which shows you the reform landscape. I've produced a timeline to show you what's coming. But also there's a link there to Exceed Academy's Trust website. So Copthorne Primary School and Exceed Academy's Trust are the organisations that are designated to lead Bradford Teaching School Hub. And that really stems from the fact that the Trust has an ethical goal, which is about contributing to system-wide improvements in education. And we see that function coming through Bradford Teaching School Hub. Just very briefly, I'm going to just use 3 diagrams just to introduce the golden thread of teacher and leader development if you're not familiar with it already. These diagrams get more detailed as we go along. So the first one just gives you that broad overview really of that golden thread that we've already mentioned. So it starts with initial teacher training, and in September 2020 the core content framework for initial teacher training was introduced for the first time. So what we have now is a framework that progresses from ITT into the first 2 years of a teacher's career, that time when they're classed as early career teachers, and is represented by the early career framework, a body of support to help them to be successful in the first 2 years of their career. That framework is built on with time. So with the introduction of the new specialist MPQs that we'll talk about a little bit later on, and the reformed leadership MPQs, plus the new head teacher program, we have a nice continuum there of support from early in a career to once people are expert teachers and experienced leaders. This diagram just gives you a little more detail in terms of the MPQs. So the MPQ in leading teaching is one of the new ones, MPQ in leading culture and behaviour, and the MPQ in leading teacher development are the 3 MPQs that we'll be delivering from September for the first time. On top of that, there'll be the National Professional Qualification for Senior Leadership, one you'll be familiar with. I've just spotted a typo in there. It isn't leadership, it's leadership. And also the MPQ for headship that have been around many years, along with the MPQ for executive leadership. The new head teacher program we'll talk about a little bit later on, and that will very much complement the MPQH program. This diagram, I appreciate you'll probably struggle to read on screen, but will be available afterwards. This diagram highlights the themes that feature in each of those MPQs. So you can see the progression there that we referred to before, well entrenched, well embedded within these programs. So you can see things like culture, for example, permeating through most of these frameworks. Behaviour is another one that features strongly. So there is that continuum now planned within these programs. So as I say, once you get copies of these slides, you'll be able to explore those things in a bit more detail, and we'll also provide you with links to each of the frameworks for the MPQs, for example, so you can explore the content in a lot more detail. So I'm going to stop talking at this point and hand over to Emma, who's going to talk to you about the early career framework and where that's got to in terms of national rollout. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Hi, everybody. As Paul said, some of you may be very familiar with the early career framework, with Bradford being part of the early rollout, but we've got quite a lot of new developments that we'd like to share with you. One obviously being that the national rollout from September sees that shift to the early career framework becoming an entitlement and therefore a legal requirement for all NQTs to access. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of some key messages of the early career framework. It's an evidence base. The early career framework is an evidence base that underpins this new entitlement for early career teachers' professional development, and it really does set out what all early career teachers should learn and how to put that into practice, including real focus sections on behaviour, pedagogy, curriculum, assessment and professional behaviours. That's sort of a very broad sweeping overview of the framework. The framework has then it's been designed to build upon and complement the ITT core content, ensuring that there is that real seamless transition from teacher training all the way through into NQT year. And you'll see on this slide here, as Paul has said, this is a resource pack. The progression's outlined in more detail via the embedded links on the slide just there in blue. I think what's important to note as well is that the award of QTS remains the same. It will still be awarded at the end of initial teacher training programs, but the length of induction and the NQT induction will no longer be 1 year. It will actually be 2 years via the early career framework teacher development program. Thanks, Paul. Would you like to? Oh, thank you. So we'd like to draw your attention now to what's actually changing in terms of the programme when it does become that legal requirement, as we've said. Now, this slide actually it comes from the DFE, so it's sort of straight from the horse's mouth, if you like. So I'll just kind of talk you through it in case you can't see it quite clearly on there. So the length of the support, as I've already said, shifts from 1 year to 2 years. A big change here again is the timetable reduction. Obviously, currently NQTs do get 10% off timetable, but when we see that shift into the 2-year programme, 10% for year 1, but then we get 5% reduced timetable for all our early career teachers in year 2. The content is completely different because that early career framework is sort of, that is the entitlement that everybody has to deliver their curriculum from. And the content is designed, the curriculum is designed by that evidence base. Because in the past, I guess we've had NQT programs that different providers have led. This is kind of ensuring that real consistency in diet. One of the great things again about the early career framework is it really raises the profile and importance of mentors. And we know that NQTs do ordinarily have mentors, but here again, there is that real emphasis on access to fully trained and supported mentors, not just for 1 year, for 2. The assessment again, there are definitely significant changes to assessment, but not in how it's done. NQTs will still be assessed against the teacher's standards, and I think it's really important to note that the early career framework isn't assessment tools. Teachers will still be assessed against the teacher's standards, but there'll be 2 formal assessment points as opposed to 3. In that 1-year induction now, we've had 3 formal assessment points. When the early career framework commences, it will actually be 2 formal assessment points over the 2 years that are supported by progress reviews. Again, one of the bigger changes is funding. Schools will receive additional funding. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a separate slide. Pay and progression will remain the same, that there is no difference in that. The role of the appropriate body, they still will have the powers to sign off the 2-year induction. It's just that it will be an induction over 2 years again, as I keep repeating. And they will ensure that NQTs have fairly received support and training over those 2 years based on that evidence-based early career framework. Thanks, Paul. Okay, so this is quite an important bit for you as school leaders. There are actually 3 approaches you can choose from to enable the delivery of the early career framework induction in your schools. And it's entirely up to you as school leaders to choose the approach that best suits you and the needs of your early career teachers and mentors. But I'm just going to talk you through the 3 options that are available to you. Option 1 is where schools can design and deliver your own induction programme, but it must, this is important, it must be based on the early career framework. So essentially you'll be designing your own curriculum. Option 2, schools can deliver their own training using the DfE accredited materials and resources that will be readily available via the government website. And then option 3, I don't know if you want to move the slides on a bit, Paul, because I think the magnifying glasses will go. Thank you. Option 3, which is sort of more the DfE recommended one, is to opt into a DfE funded provider-led programme. Now, the DfE have funded the development and production of the materials and curriculum of the early career framework and have nationally accredited 6 providers that are Ambition, Teach First, Best Practice Network, Educational Development Trust, UCL, I think that's all 6 of them, to deliver face-to-face, combined face-to-face and online training to both early career teachers and mentors. And then in turn, these lead providers are subcommissioning partners to deliver this curriculum at a local level, and Bradford Teaching School Hub will actually be a delivery partner for the early career framework. And I think the biggest sort of difference to note in the 3 options is that with the 3rd option, the funding differences are quite significant. You get quite a lot of funding in year if you go for option 3, but also additional funding to backfill 35 hours of mentor time over the 2 years. But as Paula said, this is a resource that you can go back to and read at your leisure. Any questions, just pop in the chat function. Thanks, Paul. And finally, the funding. So at the top of this slide here, there's an embedded link that will take you straight to the DfE page, which shows completely how the allocated resources have been distributed. Obviously, there will be funding given to direct lead providers, as I've mentioned previously, those 6 national accredited providers. But then in turn, they will partner up with delivery partners such as Bradford Teaching School Hub or other teaching school hubs across the country, and funding will come to us to deliver their curriculum programmes. Fundings for schools. Schools will receive additional funding for 5% off timetable in the second year to enable your early career teachers to engage with this training. In that second year, there'll be a real focus on subject specialism as well. Just thought I'd add that in there. As I said again, with option 3, there will be additional funding for mentors as well. Schools are set to receive around £2,100 per pair, so that's per early career teacher and mentor if you are accessing the full induction programme as outlined as option 3 on the previous slide. Now, I do feel like I've thrown a hell of a lot of information at you there. So if anybody does have any questions, please do feel free to pop them into the chat function. Or if, Paul, you feel there is anything to add to complement what I've sort of gone through there, please do.
Yeah, some really great points there, Emma, that you've covered off. It's worth pointing out the Department for Education will be expecting schools to increasingly shift to the full induction programme over the next few years. So that is probably the programme you're probably best spending the bulk of your time exploring. And as Emma says, it's the one that brings the greatest level of funding into your school to help make it happen. You know, using the other programmes, you're having to really think about, you know, how you resource your development of your own program yourself, so it has those complexities around that. In terms of what's coming soon to support you, again, just reassurance in the fact that we will be a delivery partner for one of the lead providers. We're probably just a couple of days away from being able to announce which organisation we'll be working with, so if you just bear with us, we will make that announcement. We've just got to go through a couple of steps just to confirm that. But coming in the summer term, we'll continue these teacher development network events, but we'll also have briefing events specifically for those schools that access the full induction programme. There will be training for facilitators who, you know, will deliver the programme when it comes to that local delivery that Emma has described. There'll be training for your mentors, so they're up and running before September, you know, taking lots of learning from the early rollout of the ECF. You know, some of those things ended up happening too late. You know, we'll be putting in place a programme during the summer term. And of course, you'll be able to start registering your early career teachers with us as well. As Emma's already said, and I think I alluded to as well, we will offer an appropriate body service. Now's not the time really to tell you too much about that, because we're still on a learning journey ourselves. We're awaiting some guidance from the Department for Education in the next couple of weeks. That will give us a lot more information that we'll then be able to respond to and then, you know, tell you what our programme looks like going forward.
Paul, can I just answer? There's a question in the chat from Vicky asking about they have an NQT starting after Easter. I presume that's so can we apply for funding, or does it start in September? The national rollout starts in September, Vicky. So if you have an early career teacher starting after Easter, as in this academic year, we're still in the early rollout, so that wouldn't apply. But I think equally moving forward, when you go into September, your NQT will still be in their induction phase, and that's something I think that we're in communication with the department, Paul, in terms of the clarity on that for staggered starting points for NQTs.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things the department went on a journey around, you know, was that mid-year start, but they are saying that that has been addressed this time around. So we'll get more detail when we can and share that. So we do have a means for you to let us know, how many early career teachers and mentors that you may wish to access the support through us going forward. There's a link there to the expression of interest form where you can, very briefly, very quickly make those indications to us. The Department for Education are asking lead providers to indicate how many places they'll need in each area very soon, early April. In fact, they're wanting those indications. Now, we're very understanding that recruitment processes have barely started in many cases, so you may not know how many early career teachers you need. But if you do have a sense, then it's useful for us to get that indication from you, so we can make that case to try and reserve those places for you going forward. Okay, so we're going to jump onto the culture and coaching offer. So I'm going to hand over to Stuart in a second. Just to remind you, really, going back to that diagram I used at the start, this is part of our high quality CPD offer. What we wanted to do is to develop something that was tailored and unique to Bradford. So through those roundtable discussions, we're talking to school leaders, the importance of culture and coaching in terms of school improvement and COVID recovery came through really strongly. But also, as we mentioned before, culture and coaching are really significant features within many of those frameworks that we've been exploring, like the MPQs. But what we also know is it's really crucial for school-to-school support to be successful as well. So we're excited to be developing this offer, but I'll hand over to Stuart to tell you more.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're well, and I'm sure you're enjoying having your children back in school. The culture and coaching offer is basically another form of CPD. And as you can see on the slide there, it goes from initial teacher trainers right up to heads and exec heads. And within that, we're not just talking about coaching, we're also including mentoring. So the basic vision has 3 elements, and I'm going to ask Paul to do the first slide. So the first element to the vision may seem very obvious, but it's starting at the most essential bit. It is about valuing relationships. And you can see from the slide there that the intent of that is actually about really connecting with people and that professional and personal trust, and how we motivate and get the discretionary effort. Because if we don't have that, then that's not a basis to form good mentoring or good coaching on. The second element, as Paul will click us on next, is around growing professional confidence. Okay, so this is about high challenge, low threat. This is around mentoring or instructional coaching. This is about essentially people being reflective practitioners. So not spoon-fed or worried are they doing things the right or the wrong way, but working things out for themselves. And essentially that's also linking to well-being, isn't it? But the word there is about growing professional confidence. The third part of the vision of this offer is around coaching for school improvement, giving leaders at different levels quality time to work things out for themselves, to have clarity, optimism, clear ways forward, and ultimately so they improve outcomes in schools for children via the very best staff. So that's the 3 elements to the vision. It's around valuing relationships, growing professional confidence, and coaching for school improvement. Now, every setting is very different, and whilst there will be a number of courses and coaching training you can offer, and different types of coaching and mentoring and instructional mentoring, it actually comes back to your setting. What is unique to your setting at the moment? What's the context? Where are you up to in terms of Ofsteds? Where are you in terms of your staff development? So what we're suggesting, and this was really helpful feedback from the roundtable discussions I've had, was that initially, if you're interested in accessing some of this work, that there would be an initial conversation, a face-to-face meeting to work out where you're up to and what specifically are the needs of your school. Now, we've looked at potential challenges at the moment in these unusual times, and these are 4 or 5 out of a suite of 9 that we've identified, which would form that initial conversation. So here's the first one. Okay, I was lucky enough during the pandemic to spend some time as an interim head teacher, and it was very different to my other 2 headships, because quite naturally, as a lot of you are experiencing, for a large part it's been operational, and it's getting back that balance now between the operational and that longer term vision, and getting back on that school improvement journey that many of you are on. But actually that might need some help. People are a little bit confused about where they're going to. They've got lots of information overwhelming them, actually. So that's one of the challenges that we have got at the moment. The next one, which may be appropriate to your setting, it might not be. In all my experience of coaching leaders and working with training, I think one of the most common threads that comes out is at times we all feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we think it's just ourselves, and then we realize that most of us at some point lose a bit of clarity. We have competing demands on us. What's the most important thing to work at the time? What's the main thing in your setting that's going to make the difference? So this is a question or a statement around that, and around how coaching could help you and your leadership team be very clear about what it is you want and what you're going to do and by when. Thank you, Paul. This is going back to the fact that, you know, for years we've had school improvement plans, okay, and over the years the focus has changed, and we write very good school improvement plans on the whole. They're cognitive pieces of work, they focus on data, they focus on context and need, but actually we all know as leaders that actually one of the real issues around school improvement is that it's actually socially complex. It's not necessarily the data or the actions, but how do we get people on board? How do we get the best out of people? So is leadership just about actions, or is leadership about a set of behaviours and a set of mindsets that bring out the best in people? Thank you, Paul. Okay, this is going back to some of the value in relationships and actually accessing people's own values. We all bring to the profession our own life experiences, and I'm sure that has shaped us as teachers and leaders. But actually, in some schools, have we completely tapped into people's discretionary efforts, into their moral purpose? Have they got a real clear sight of the bigger picture of why they're there and what difference they want to make to children? In some of our settings that are still struggling, that isn't always the case. And we might want to unpick that with various bits of CPD that goes back to your initial values and individual bits of coaching and individual bits of mentoring. I think this is the last one, Paul. Okay. This is the fact that I think consistency in schools is a really important thing. But there's a balance between consistency and autonomy, and also being directed all the time to do things in a very specific way. And this is trying to get the balance that we talked about before when we talked about growing professional confidence, about people working things out for themselves, being reflective practitioners, elements of deliberate practice that they know will extend and challenge their learners. So there's some of the different. Now, I'm wondering if any of those statements resonated with you, and which one was the most important one to you. That would be part of the initial conversation we would have with you, and working out what you want from the offer that's available. Thank you, Paul. Okay, the full programme will be published for September, and there'll be much more information coming your way about exactly what the offer is and what CPD is. There's a number of courses, but essentially there's work on instructional coaching, and that's something that Emma's going to be leading on. There's continued work on leadership coaching that I will be leading on. And there's also a number of ways of accessing coaching, be it remotely and virtually, be it one-to-one leadership coaching, or be it group coaching, depending what you need in your scenario. If you have any questions, please put them on the chat. If you are interested in finding out more, please use the contact details later that Paul will share. Have you got anything else to add, Paul?
No, I don't think I do at this point. I just bounce back to Emma. Is there anything in the chat, Emma, that we could be answering at this moment in time, or should we skip on?
No, we've got a quiet group, Paul.
Okay.
Oh, actually, Michael's put something in actually about which everybody can see around his understanding of induction over time, and yet I agree with that. I think we're just more thinking about people accessing the funding for the early career framework at different starting points. But thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Very, very briefly, MPQs, which we've already mentioned a couple of times. Again, when you get this resource pack, these are the links out to the information on our portal to tell you about each of those programs. You'll notice there that MPQML is no longer on the list, National Professional Qualification for Middle Leadership. That's been replaced by the new MPQ. So MPQML will be no more from September. The new head teacher program's an interesting development. We don't have huge amounts of detail yet, but we do know we'll be offering that. So I don't know, we're looking forward to a journey during the summer term to learn more about what that program will entail. It's envisaged that it will be a coaching type program. Head teachers in the first 2 years in post will be encouraged to access that, and ideally to run MPQH alongside that. So we'll come back to you with more information. We do envisage that there will be scholarship funding available for eligible schools, and there's a link here. Again, you'll have access to if you're interested in registering for any of the MPQs. let us know, and then we can, once we've got more details, we can make sure we're communicating directly with you. And equally, if you feel you might be eligible for the new head teacher program, let us know. And again, we can send information to you once we get the detail emerging during the summer term. Okay, so just to wrap up the event then, I just have some quick news articles, very much in brief. So first of all, the newsletter, the next newsletter will go out later this afternoon. Everybody should receive that. If you don't receive it, then please visit the sign up form and register your details. We would encourage you to ask your entire workforce to sign up for that newsletter. We are trying to develop that newsletter to be a resource that covers all the curriculum hubs and lead providers to make sure that you're getting all the key information into your inbox once a week. So trying to make sure schools aren't overwhelmed, but there's one high quality communication that gives you everything you need. Equally, if you want to download our app, that's a free download, so you receive notifications when things are posted on there. It won't be dozens of notifications every day by any means, but it's quite a useful resource there, particularly if you're operating as a system leader, for example. You can see some of the resources you'll be using via the app. We're establishing a working group during the summer term to try and support schools and trusts to develop their recruitment and retention strategies. So, like we said before, this is about investing in your current workforce, but also those colleagues who may come and join your teams in the future. If we're really strong at communicating what the offers are to your workforce, and that includes what you offer them as an organisation for their own development, then surely that's got to help strengthen recruitment and retention within the district. So if you're interested in joining that working group, please let us know and we'll communicate with you very soon. We've got a big piece of work lined up around supporting schools to undertake, and teachers to undertake, a due diligence process when selecting high quality CPD. We're in a time when time is precious and budgets are tight, so we are looking to provide some support to providers to help them to promote their events better and to provide more detailed information out to schools and trusts around what their offers are. But equally, we want to support the workforce to be asking the right questions before they commit to programs. So we'll share resources with you as those are developed over the coming months. You may have seen this in our recent newsletters and on our portal, but we're really looking particularly for some Key Stage 3 and 4 history teachers to support some work that's been undertaken by the museums, the local authority and schools, linked to slavery, colonialism and Black Lives Matters. A lot of work has gone into reviewing the statues and monuments in Bradford to look at their history. There's now an intention to create an interactive resource for schools to use, but we really need to make sure that's fit for purpose for the teaching workforce before any funding is invested. So if you've got any colleagues from any phase, but particularly Key Stage 3 or 4, who you feel would contribute to that group, we're not asking for a huge amount of time, just a couple of hours. Would really appreciate them getting in touch with us via that expression of interest form. And I think finally, just to mention the National Tutoring Programme to support COVID recovery. Again, you may have attended some events about this already. The government is subsidising the cost of the tutoring by 75%. In Bradford, 61 schools have already signed up to that offer. So again, just to make sure you're aware that it is out there, and there is capacity still for tuition partners to support your school. So that's the key link really coming out of today's event. That's where we're going to post all the resources from today's event and a recording of this session if you want to watch it back. So please do visit that as soon as you can. You can access it via our homepage as well from our website. You'll see the Teacher Development Network link, which I've taken a little screenshot of down in the bottom corner. And we're looking to do the next event on the 18th of May. So again, once you visit that link, there will be a further link for you to register. So do keep in touch with us, please. Do drop us a line with some feedback. Hopefully today's event has been helpful. As I say, we focused on the big picture of some of the reforms that are coming. There's more, but let's take things one step at a time. What we're looking to do during the summer term now is to really give you the meat on the bones, the detail behind each of those developments, so you can get more involved. But please use those expressions of interest form if you know of early career teachers that you're likely to have in post come September, even if you don't know their names. If you'll be appointing some early career teachers, do let us know your approximate numbers. If you're interested in finding out more about the MPQs, again, use the expression of interest forms so that we can make sure we're getting that information to you. The portal that we have, our website, is very much designed to support schools and trusts to access all the support they need. So again, if you get 10 minutes, please do visit the portal, explore it a little bit, see what resources are out there. I'm sure you'll come across some things that you perhaps weren't aware were available to your school. Thank you for your time. It's been really great to see you all today. I'll leave the screen live, so if you've got any further questions to post, please do, and then we'll follow up with those questions after today's event. So thanks again. Thanks to Stuart. Thanks to Emma as well.